afternoon. My name is Katie, and I am the oldest of the Walling grandchildren. I actually held the title of favorite granddaughter for a really long time. Until Callie came along and took over. She was the baby. My husband and I, we had 3 children, and we came to visit Grandma last week, and she kept her eyes closed most of the time, but when I reached for her hand, she squeezed my hand. So I hope she was listening, and I really hope that she felt surrounded by love last week. When I talked to my kids the evening that Grandma passed away, the next morning, my youngest son, Gus, who's 9 years old, he came and he said, "Mom, you know what I love about Grandma Jo?" I said, "No, what?" And he said, "When I think about Grandma Renee, Granddaddy Gus, and Papa," these were his great-grandparents who passed away, he said, "Grandma Jo is the only one that I got to meet." He said, "She waited to meet me." And I said, "You know what, buddy? She loved meeting you, and she always loved a new baby, so she was happy to meet Gus." And really what struck me about what he said is that he referenced 3 great-grandparents that he never met. And he knew about them because we say their names and we tell stories about them. So I would just encourage everyone here today to continue to tell stories about the people that you love. Keep their memory alive through those stories. So for our Grandma Jo, you've already heard a couple of them here. In 91 years, there are a lot of stories. So my brother John and I want to share a few of our favorite stories today. So I know Callie already mentioned Hardee's, and she was a regular and well-known patron of the Hardee's. And so we were in town one day, we had spent the night, and the next morning we said, "Hey, we'll go order breakfast at the Hardee's." And she said, "Okay, great." And I said, "What can I get you? What do you want to get?" And she referenced her drink, of course, and said, but she said, "I would like a senior Diet Coke." And I said, "Okay, you sure you don't want a sweet tea?" And she said, "No, that's what I want today." And I said, "Okay." So we go and order, and I placed the order, and of course said, make sure I said senior. I'm not really sure if there's a discount at the Hardee's or not, but she was very clear to call it a senior drink. But I ordered, and I said, "Hey, I need to get a senior Diet Coke." And they said, "Hold on, is that for Miss Jo?" I said, "Yes, it is." They said, "Nope, nope, she needs the sweet tea." And I said, "Listen, this is what she asked for." And they said, "Give her another cup. You take both drinks to her." So that day, she got 2 drinks. I don't know which one she really wanted, but she got 2. Another favorite story of mine, every year Grandma would send us a card on our birthday, signed Grandma Jo. She would send us a check in our card every year. And so, naturally you would think she knows when my birthday is. My birthday is July 26th. And so one year my brother was at Grandma's house the day of my birthday, and he's like, "Oh, Grandma, I gotta call Katie, it's her birthday." And she said, "Nope, it's the 27th, darling." And he said, "No, I think it's the 26th. She said, "Nope, it's the 27th. And so he did not call me that year on my birthday. But when he called me on the 27th, I said, "No, it actually is the 26th. And he said, "I knew it." So you can celebrate my birthday on the 26th or the 27th, whichever you prefer. And the 27th, darling, is a common phrase now in our family. Callie also mentioned shopping, and if you knew Grandma well at all, you knew that she loved to go shopping. And Papa's job was to drive her to wherever she was going to go shopping, and he would sit in the car and wait. He'd be sitting there reading the paper, but he would wait until she was done with shopping. And so I imagine for the last 15 years, he has been in heaven waiting for her, and I can only imagine the reunion they had when he got to see her again. Thank y'all for listening to her stories. John's going to share a few more as well.
I missed one. Land of the Living. One of my personal favorites. I'm John. I'm the 2nd oldest grandchild. And like Katie said, we're going to share a few thoughts and memories about Grandma. Most of my earliest memories of Grandma go back to when I was a child. Holidays at her house, in particular Christmas, they were always special. I probably didn't recognize it then, but she really made a huge effort to make sure that those times were great for us. As I get older, I can see that effort coming from my parents towards their grandchildren. In my teenage years, I was starting to understand that Grandma Joe was a unique individual. The house where I grew up in Clemson was really old and really big, but the single bathroom we all shared was really small. It was a one in, one out kind of deal. And here I am in the shower, 14 years old maybe. I thought I heard a noise in the bathroom. So I peek out of the shower curtain to investigate, and on the opposite side of the curtain is the bottom half of Grandma. Her top half is peeking inside the shower curtain at me. Immediately traumatized. By the time I got into my 20s, she hadn't changed a bit. I decided to bring a few friends down for the weekend and do some fishing. It was a great day. We caught a few fish and everybody had a blast. I told the fellas I got just the spot to clean these fish. Back then, Grandma kept the key right above the door to the nursery. I guess Grandma and Papa were still out shopping, so we just let ourselves in. Grandma busted through the door like a tornado and said, "John, you big dunce, get them fish out of my floor." I still to this day have friends in Clemson that come up to me and say, "John, you big dunce, what you been up to?" In my 30s, I was living in the low state and I was able to see her a little more often. My first year here, I took her fresh corn and peanuts right out of the field. Every year after that, she made it a point to remind me, "You bringing me corn and penders, right?" Penders are peanuts, by the way. I think after I went back to Clemson, I was still peddling corn through Lyle. 2 bushels. Anyway, and then in the last few years of her life, as her mind started slipping, I took my son to visit Grandma. And even though her memory was fading, her sass definitely was not. I said, "This is my son, Grandma, your great-grandson." "Whose kid is this?" "This is my son. I'm John Boy, your grandson." "Yeah, well, what's his name?" "His name is Bo." "Well, that's a dumb name." "You couldn't come up with something better than Bo?" Grandma always gave it to you straight. You definitely knew where she stood. What I'll remember most about Grandma Joe was her honesty, her unique way of talking, her flamboyant personality, and her love for family. Thank you for everybody coming and celebrating her life today.
That's going to be tough to follow.